actually there's no such thing as grocery inflation or rent inflation.
Many years ago, it started out with a 5-year mortgage with 20% down. Now we're talking about 30-year mortgages so that you really never own your home. The government is the sole and entire cause of inflation. It does it by printing up money directly and indirectly. And what that does is it destroys the capital that you save. Americans save in dollars. Okay, you want to get ahead? You produce more than you consume and you save the difference in dollars. But when the government destroys those dollars through inflation, your standard of living goes down. Now, that's been disguised through debt. It used to be that when you bought a house, you paid cash for it. Then, many years ago, it started out with a 5-year mortgage with 20% down. Now we're talking about 30-year mortgages so that you really never own your home. Inflation is the real problem. It destroys capital. It destroys people's standard of living. The standard of living, generally speaking, in the U.S. is going down. It's disguised by the fact that when you borrow money, you're either taking capital that people have saved in the past and you're using it for consumer goods now, or you're mortgaging your future for a higher standard of living today. But all the debt we have in the U.S., I think, is unsustainable. And we could have either a credit collapse if they don't create money fast enough, or if they raise interest rates too high, or we could have something resembling a hyperinflation like we have down here in Argentina. Either way, it's going to be very, very bad news, because in an advanced industrial society like the U.S., to poison the money supply with inflation is asking for economic catastrophe. So I think what we're looking at over the next 10 years, and this is true for a number of reasons, not least of them, is the fact that Americans have elected in Washington people that are the equivalent of Jacobins during the French Revolution. I mean, they have the same ideas. I'm looking for very, very tough times, quite frankly, not just in the U.S., but almost everywhere in the world.
Today in the United States, compared to 100 years ago, one spends more of their income on housing and transportation and healthcare and less on food and clothing. And yeah, Doug, to your point about inflation, like dollars are such a poor measuring stick. That's why earlier when we look at the cost of housing, I tried to discard dollars by going ahead and looking at the ratio between the home price and the gold price. And I brought up the point last month with our audience that actually there's no such thing as grocery inflation or rent inflation. It's the government that creates the inflation. So it's not landlords or grocers that are creating inflation. Those higher prices are just a consequence of the inflation that the central bank creates. And that's creating this erosion of the middle class, because those in the lower middle class and the poor, they don't have assets that benefit from the inflation, yet they have the same fixed consumer costs that we're talking about here, like housing, transportation, healthcare, food, and clothing. So talk to us some more about the problem in the government and how that could help lead us toward a silent depression. I know you brought up the point that the U.S. government is running embedded deficits of $2 trillion per year, and that number is going to go much higher, if only because the interest cost alone is $1 trillion per year.
Yeah, people have to stop looking at the government as being their friend. It's not. It's a predator. It's a dead hand on top of society. It's certainly not a cornucopia, which is the way most people seem to see the government. The government will give them stuff.
Right.
The government will do stuff. No, it doesn't. The government produces absolutely nothing that it doesn't take away first from society as a whole. So people have to stop looking at the government as a friendly big brother. It's more like, increasingly, the kind of big brother that you might have discovered in George Orwell's 1984. And go back to the values, moral values, social values, type of thing that this country had 200 years ago when it was founded. I mean, that's my answer to the question. And the money, the dollar itself is a floating abstraction. It's a fiat currency. It's an IOU nothing on the part of a bankrupt government, which can't even tax enough to give the money value. It just prints up more money, and people out of inertia accept them. Well, there's nothing else they can use to trade. Look, we should go back to gold as being money, not even a gold-backed currency. A currency is money. It's just a medium of exchange and a store of value. You don't need to insert the government and a central bank in between you and what you do with your fellow citizens in a country. That's why we should use gold, which for thousands of years has proven to be the best thing to use as money. It's one of 92 naturally occurring elements. And just as aluminum is particularly good for building airplanes and uranium is particularly good for making nuclear power plants, gold has unique characteristics that make it unique for use as money. So the government shouldn't be involved in this. Not something that most people have even thought about. They'll say, oh, this is completely ridiculous. This is off the wall. This is unrealistic. So yeah, we're looking at a nasty depression, and it's been building up for many years. This isn't a recent phenomenon that's come up just since Biden. This is a trend that's been building up slowly for decades.
You can watch this one next.